Good evening, good evening, good evening. This is Marie Holiday, and today is Friday, November 20th, 2020. I hope everybody had a fabulous work week. And before we get started, I just want to remind all of my viewers and my subscribers and potential subscribers, if you have not hit that subscribe button to subscribe to my channel, please do so. And hit that notification button. This channel is nothing without my supporters and viewers and subscribers. And I also encourage everyone to pass this channel along to someone who can probably benefit from it. This is just valuable information. So with that being said, let's get down to today's topic. The focus of this topic is going to be me lecturing on lecture series number 4 is the final stage or the late stage of addiction. I did an upload throughout the week on the early stage of addiction, the middle stage of addiction, the late stage of addiction. And this lecture number 4 will be the late stage of addiction. So please pay attention. And I do want to remind the audience that I am a credential licensed clinical addiction specialist. I hold the addiction credentials in 3 different states. I'm considered an expert in the field. I'm qualified to assess and treat people who suffer from alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and also gambling addiction. So I'm going to present this information just in everyday, bottom line, straight up information. In introducing the late stage of addiction, what we're going to see, we're going to see a lot of things that we saw in the prior phases. We're going to see the excessive alcohol or drug use, gambling addiction. With the excessive alcohol or drug use, we're going to see the increase in tolerance. The more and more of the alcohol or drugs a person use, it's going to take more and more to receive the same effect. So as people go through the phases, many things are going on. I talked about preoccupation, where similar to mental obsession, where the person may be at a family function or at work. Physically they're there, but their mind ain't on that job or that family function. Their mind on is feeding that addiction. So we see all of that going on in the prior phases. I talked about people as they progress through the disease of addiction, they may begin to lie about the severity of the alcohol or drug use, hide their alcohol or drug use from loved ones. So we see all of that in the prior phases, in the prior stages. But I just want to encourage the audience to view my prior videos on the early stage of addiction, the middle stage of addiction, the late stage of addiction. And now I'm going to focus more on talking about some of the indicators of what we see in the late stage of addiction. We see incarceration. We see, rather it's jail or prison, because now the person alcohol and drug use has gotten out of control. They may have creating chaos at home, the community, and interfacing with law enforcement. So that's going to lead to incarceration. It can be multiple incarcerations for DWIs, theft, stealing, in order to get money to feed their addiction. Also, in the final stages of addiction, we're going to see the social death. And what I mean by the social death is because the person alcohol, the drug use, or gambling addiction has gotten so out of control, it's going to have a negative impact on family relationships, friend relationships, relationships on the job, or the community. So you're going to begin to see a social death, because they may have lied and cheat and manipulate so many people to feed their addiction, to get money to feed that addiction, that it's going to create havoc and chaos in the personal life, business life, and ultimately the social death we will see in the latter stages of addiction. Also, with what we will see, another indicator of being in a late stage of addiction, we will see problems with psychological, emotional problems. Now that the person alcohol or drug use is so severe, it's going to have an impact on their cognitive thinking, their mental, emotional well-being. So all of that's going to be impacted. You're going to begin to see problems like depression, anxiety, all of this going on in terms of the psychological and the mental and emotional death that we will see in the later stage of addiction. So you got the social death, the psychological, the emotional, the mental death in the latter part of addiction. And now if the person continues to use more and more the alcohol, the drugs, tolerance goes up, we begin to see more and more problems being created as a result or an impact of the substance use. Can be multiple DWIs, financial destruction, family destruction, physical problems. We're going to begin to see in the latter part of a stage, in this phase, we're going to begin to see some of those alcohol and drug related health problems, cirrhosis of the liver, alcohol and drug related diabetes, there are certain forms of cancer that results from alcohol or drug use, bleeding ulcers, and the list goes on. Research has validated that excessive alcohol and drug use will cut a person's lifespan by 15 to 20 years compared to someone who does not use alcohol or drugs. And if they don't get some help at this point, because they've already experienced the psychological death, the social death, if they don't get some help, some treatment, some detox at this stage of the game, then ultimately we will see the physical death. So similar to what researchers said, that people with severe alcoholism and drug addiction untreated, they're cutting their lifespan by 15 to 20 years. And another thing we see in the latter part, in the late stages of addiction, we also see the spiritual death. And that's why when the person reclaims their faith in whatever God or their belief is, they're going to have to reclaim their faith in whatever their God or belief is in order to restore their spiritual health. That in a lot of times when people get treatment and help, they may reclaim their faith and have a spiritual awakening at this stage of the game. And they can also do other things too to get support in this stage of addiction. They can get some detox treatment, outpatient treatment, residential, a sponsor, AA group, NA group, something other than the person. They're going to need some type of support to break this vicious cycle of addiction. So I just introduced the late stage of addiction. You're going to see, like I stated, the incarceration. You're going to see the social death. You're going to see the psychological, emotional, and mental death. You're going to see, ultimately, if they don't get some help, you're going to see the physical death, and then you will also see the spiritual death. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you got something out of this in terms of the late stages of addiction. Please check out my prior videos where I talk about the early stage of addiction, the middle stage of addiction, the late stage of addiction, and now you've just been introduced to the late stage of addiction. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, pass this information along, and I will see the audience again next time. Simplify.